Hey Ted,
Yes, Alex?
let me tell you about Command.
I've swapped complete failure as a Kickstarter.
Star Fox Command is the first game that you get to be Anthony Birch.
The first of many fuck yous. Like a fucking Looney Tunes? Homestuck.
The only stipulation was behave yourself and keep your dick in your pants, and you have not followed through on that.
Hello and welcome to Homestuck Ruined My Life number 4, The Huss. This is the next part of Homestuck Month 2017. First act was your first chapter part. I don't know what to call it now. It was summing up Homestuck. The second one was the 5th act, and the third one is more about the fandom stuff. This one is more about the author, who he is, and how he went about writing Homestuck. There's definitely going to be one more part after this. There might be a 6th part. When I was writing this one together, I had a whole segment about the actual final act and decided that I would cut it out because, one, it was already really long. There was stuff in it that I wasn't 100% sure of, and the 25th of this month, the next Homestuck book comes out, which is, chapter or act 4. So it'll have a shitload more commentary to pull stuff from, and allegedly the epilogue, but that fucking remains to be seen. Open this up right away with letting you guys know that Hive Swapped Act 2 is pretty much confirmed to be canceled. The only person who actually kept people updated on it was one of the musicians, James Roach. Posted that it was being indefinitely put on hiatus, so it's definitely canceled.
Yikes.
We did it, Reddit. We killed Hive Swap.
Now, I'm actually kind of curious. Did it actually make, any money?
Last I checked on Steam charts. Now, here's my theory, parentheses, game theory, about why Act 2 hasn't been made, because the engine's done. They did the first act. That came out. That wasn't a fever dream. That came out about a year ago. And then after that, Viz, there's an acquisition that I'll talk a little bit about in this episode where they got the rights to Homestuck, Viz Media, and then they fucking fired everyone at What Pumpkin.
Nice.
And what I assume it is that right now they're doing these friend sims, which are supposed to be these short visual novels that go alongside Hive Swap that go into more of the NPCs that you'd find. And those have been selling okay. They're $1 each, so they're not making a ton of money. And I think Viz is hesitant to put a bunch of money into Hive Swap because most of the people who are going to play the game already bought the game in 2012. The only people Viz is going to make money off of is brand new people who are buying the game, or people like me who lost the email that their Kickstarter key went to.
Nice.
So I think they're waiting to see how these friend sims do.
They're testing the market.
Yeah, to test the market and see if people still give a shit. Probably not. Except me. So I guess we'll start off right away with who is Andrew Hussie. He is a 40-year-old man surrounded by 20-year-olds who latched onto a webcomic about 16-year-olds kissing.
Yo, hold up. Is he actually 40? He looks way younger than that.
He is 38 or 39 years old.
Oh, man.
Yeah. He was in his mid-30s when he was writing Homestuck.
Ooh, that's going to be a yikes for me.
He is actually a very, very hard worker. He's very creative, and he's incredibly efficient. And the luckiest man in webcomics. He's a big fucking computer nerd. It's what he went to college for. I didn't dig deep enough to get his exact college name and shit, because that's when it goes from academic investigation to stalking. But he got a degree in computer science, which did show up in Homestuck, just like everything else in his life kind of showed up in the comic. Yeah, a lot of the early stuff, like the Syllodexes, there was a lot of coding nonsense and data structures and super duper turbo nerd shit that came from that showed up in Homestuck. He actually was a pretty good artist. He did traditional comics. A few that I know that he posted on the internet were Whistles in the Starlight Calliope, which I read and it was actually pretty good. It's about a clown running away from the circus. There's one called AIDS, Neon Ice Cream Headache, and then like a few others.
When it comes to Andrew Hussie's other work, the only thing I actually know that he did were those stupid little comics that you sent me of the skeletons, and then Problem Sleuth, which I read all the way through because you put a fucking gun to my head.
Yep, that's true. I did put a gun to your head. Those little comics that he used to make, he used to post on the Penny Arcade forums under the name SO, which is actually where Sweet Bro and Hella Jeff started because he just wanted to make fun of some guy's terrible fucking webcomic. Then with him and his friends, he made those little black and white strip, like those little cartoon strips. That was called Team Special Olympics. And they're pretty fucking good. You can find them all. They're not hosted on his website anymore, but you can find them around. My favorite ones were the Lazy Bone dance and the one where the black basketball player dunks his welfare check.
Ted, you can't say that. We're PC now.
It's funny. Penny Arcade Forums is also where he did Jailbreak, his first choose your own adventure comic where he had people type in the fucking submissions, put them on the forum, then he would just pick and choose them. The dude is basically like a fucking walking thesaurus of weird, outdated terms and synonyms. And I think prose is the word I'm looking for. Like his cadence of typing. You know, like how a cadence is how someone speaks.
Yeah. Like an accent or something.
Yeah, like the way he types. Like when me and you talk to each other over the internet, we'll do like really short, like 2 to 3 word long messages. So like I'll wake up and see there's 78 messages on Discord, and about 75 of those are just you saying, dude, bros.
Yeah, so like, even though it's 70 messages, it's more or less like actually 10.
Yeah. But the way that he kind of text speaks reminds me a lot of like Homestar Runner, where it's a lot of really old words and like weird conjugations and shit.
Do you have any examples? Because I'm actually not entirely following you on this one. I'm trying to like picture it, but I can't really.
Things like when a character levels up, the levels that are on their echelon are like really fucking weird words. Like boy plucky potluck or something, and then just like really old words that no one uses anymore.
Something that you'd expect in like a really old last cartoon, but no one would actually speak like this.
Or something like I know that 2 of his major influences, which I never actually read much of these, and I probably should have. Terry Pratchett, who made the Discworld series, where Earth is a flat disc on top of 4 elephants on top of a sea turtle in space. And then Mark Twain. And Mark Twain is, Mark Twain. They're both like really fanciful dudes who are all kind of aloof. And he takes the way that he writes shit takes after those 2. From what I know of Terry Pratchett and Mark Twain, from like the little bits I've read, it's pretty similar. He also made a video on YouTube once where Alf gets raped. So
nice.
So I want to talk, before the actual techniques and style of Homestuck, I want to talk about the early internet culture, like pre-2010. Because Andrew Hussie's an older dude. His last fucking video game console was a Nintendo GameCube, which is why he gave it to Roxy and Homestuck, because that was the most recent one that he knew of. So Alex, what do you remember about early internet, like before you started playing Team Fortress 2, like that early?
I specifically remember that people would still use leet speak, but unironically.
That's where
the word frag was actually still used. It was basically a lot of things that are ironic now weren't back then. PvP montages in World of Warcraft with like edgy music were the norm and not something you mock.
You had shit like actual internet forums and message boards. You had like Hamster Dance and LimeWire.
You had Newgrounds. Remember Newgrounds? I remember Newgrounds. Things were so much better then.
Now, there was a joke that was pretty common in relatively early internet of like, the internet is serious business. And that, okay, so that was the internet culture kind of then, was that no one actually gives that much of a shit.
Everyone was fucking around. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I know
Yeah.
what you mean.
And then internet use spread and those fucking normies took it over, bros. Now I can't even have my dog give a Nazi salute without having to go to court. That's an actual thing. There's some guy in Europe who had his girlfriend's pug, like, wipe his face with his paw while saying Hail Hitler. And he had to go to fucking court over it.
But to be fair, I was also in Europe. They're a little more sensitive to that kind of shit.
But the internet is a daily part of most people's lives now, and lost a lot of, like, the overly snarky and edgy, like, teen phase.
It lost what made it special. Everything sucks now.
So Hussie's personality, like all writers, is connected to his work really, like, deep down. And I got a few standout moments that showcased him being like a snarky, sarcastic 2004 internet asshole. He used to run a blog, and as part of an ongoing joke, he staunchly refused to ever set foot in an Olive Garden. Eventually, a bunch of people got money together, like $200 or something. I know it was 100, but less than 300. They gave him it as like an Olive Garden fund. And which he then said, I'm never going to use this for Olive Garden, so instead I'm going to pay this douchebag to make me a soul portrait. Which was like, he would take a picture of you and then put a bunch of Photoshop filters and like sparkles and unicorns and all this weird shit on it. And on his blog, he posted the one he got. And he's like, wow, this is really shitty. So he decided to just fucking flex on the guy and make one that was 10 times better.
Nice.
A more well-known one to people who read Homestuck was there was this guy who made modern fantasy paintings. And they were all really fucking bad. There was one where there's a black horse fighting a football player with a stormy castle in the background, and like the guy didn't know how to draw horses, so it had like human back muscles. And he saw this and he needed the painting. So he messaged the guy and he's like, hey, I'm willing to pay you like $60. He was willing to pay up to 150. And the guy keeps like, no, I'm like, so it's worth more than that. So he like starts shit talking him on his fucking blog. And in the end, he paid the guy about $500 for the painting.
Why? Also, can I please ask? So, like, Hussie was getting this money from the fans. Did anyone care that he just wasn't going to Olive Garden and was just using this money for fucking memes?
I mean, it was way funnier that he was flexing on this dude with that $200. Like, it was funnier to the people who, because it wasn't like a donation drive that he hosted. People gave him that money.
I guess.
He said,
yeah.
I'm never going to use this for Olive Garden, but I will use it for something else. And then used it for that.
I mean, it works for me, I guess.
But I think that it was either that painting or the Star Trek Next Generation YouTube edits that he used to make. Those are still up and they're still pretty funny. The same channel that has Elf getting raped, it's called Jandrew Edits. It was either those or the painting which started the like ha horses cult of personality that Andrew Hussie has. It was something that, because horses are weird. They're like these big muscled mammals that we break their spirit so we can ride them around. And they're fucking weird.
Also, if they break their legs, they're just dead now.
So that's something that he's always kind of cultivated, and he would bring it up every now and then, just like as a one-off goof. But after Homestuck, he really kind of pushed for it because he retreated back from like the spotlight and just had ha horses, look at me pet this. Oh man, look at that. But I'll mention that, way later on, a little bit more about those.
All right.
There was a forum spring that he used to have where people could submit questions about the comic. And this was pretty much the last time that you could see this dumb 2000 internet Hussie before he pretty much stopped interacting with any fans. He'd berate people for asking stupid questions and go off on rants about how Vriska is his wife and that there's the Homestuck fat camps. It was actually pretty great to read.
So I was about to ask, so while he's doing this, like, this crazy fucking meme campaign, right? Where in Homestuck, like, were you? Or where the audience, like, while he's doing all this shit? Like, what part was it on?
Well, the horses, the horse painting in the Olive Garden, those were actually during Problem Sleuth, I believe, or very, very early Homestuck. I didn't actually start Homestuck until April 13th of 2010, because it was the 1 year Flash Jack Rise Up or whatever.
Gamers, rise up.
Huh. No, I think it was Descend. I think Descend was the one. That was the first time I saw Homestuck, so I was pretty early on. But on this form spring, there was something that happened around mid-2011. He tried out a new art style in the comic, because he was always trying new things. And it was going back to his original actual art style. Like, sketching it with, like, a pen and shit. And it wasn't bad. It was just like his older work, but the first time it was shown was legit really fucking ugly because the proportions were all off. She had those like big ass Steven Universe lips, and it was really bad. So he was getting a bunch of flack from people, and he was responding by getting really fucking bitchy on his form spring. Now here's my favorite quote from this. What I find really irritating is when troglodytes from the internet chirp up and bombastically suggest their judgment is better than mine when it comes to the aesthetic direction of Homestuck, or really any kind of direction for that matter. He went on like a super fucking long rant. I think it was the longest answer he ever gave.
Yeesh.
About people giving knee-jerk reactions to new stuff and basically just being a fucking baby about it. And he made sure to end his rant on like a real fucking smug note so that he's still cool and uncaring by finishing with a somewhat sincere, like, ironic football end zone dance. After all, Alex, holding a serious opinion is for losers, right?
I mean, that's why fucking stupid shows like Rick and Morty never take themselves seriously, to a fault.
So, Andrew Hussie made Jailbreak on the Penny Arcade forums. That kind of one-off, like, oh, here's a choose-your-own adventure, who gives a shit? It lasted a decently long time. It was, I think it was like a few months before like he just kind of stopped it. So he experimented on that formula with a multiple path story called Bard Quest. And this is something important to note. He started with an idea and got kind of bored with it. So he tried some new stuff to evolve on what was there already. So after Bard Quest came his first real webcomic, Problem Sleuth. Plan was to have like a general idea of the story, right? And then to adapt it to like weird curveballs that the audience would throw at him, because he would open it up and just takes fan submissions for the entire thing.
Now, I have a question about that, because this was curious to me, because I read Problem Sleuth and it was already done, because, you made me. And I was always wondering, did he ever, like, not do what they said? Like, did he have a plan, and if they didn't agree with it, he would just say fuck it and go with his plan anyway?
What would happen is that they would fill out a form on the forums or post like in the thread, and then he would just choose one. He mentioned near the end of Problem Sleuth that he knew how he was going to end it, so there was enough coming in that he would just choose one that fit what he wanted to do. Early on, though, he would just take one from random on there. He's like, that one sounds interesting. Let's do this one. Let's have him turn his fort into his desk into a pillow fort. Okay, now where's this going? And that's why it took a bit. But there was this fan submission of the story accomplished a few things. It kept the story moving in an unpredictable fashion. It opened up all sorts of new ideas that he would have never even thought of. And it kept him interested in the story. Now, he mentioned in his forum spring that he was actually getting bored of Problem Sleuth near the end. And Problem Sleuth is only 1 year. It lasted 1 full year and then it was done. So he was adding all these new things and taking in these curveballs, but he was still getting kind of bored with it. So his next project was going to be, again, another experiment with the previous story format. So he was doing very long, like 13-second long, like really involved GIFs or GIFs in like Problem Sleuth that would just go for a super, super long time and always loop. So I think this is what gave him the idea to use Flash. So the Homestuck beta was on April 10, 2009, 3 days before the normal one. and it was made 100% in Flash. And there's some really interesting concept art that he shared where like it's an isometric view and like the kids have like square Funko Pop looking fucking heads.
Ugh.
But the Homestuck beta, John was 10 years old and he took the story submissions. It was just him dicking around in his room. And then he eventually was like, you know what? I don't want to do this. This is too much hard work. Because everything was like really smooth and weird. And like there was a little tag on John's pants that was like sticking out. It was basically, if he was going to do it in Flash, he had to be pixel basically perfect. And he decided, fuck this. So he went back to a mixture. He went to the GIFs and then eventually flashes and the games and all that other sorts of shit.
So I have a question about the flashes. So what will happen to... I mean, I'm maybe getting ahead of myself, but what will happen to Homestuck once Flash does go down in 2020?
Well, when Viz Media acquired the story, they actually started the process of converting all of the Flash games into HTML5. So
I thought ahead.
I don't know if they have all of them yet. The big, the last two big Flashes were just on fucking YouTube. So those ones are fine. But stuff like John and his dad fighting or exploring his house, those have been converted to HTML5.
Okay.
Which I believe is the same process Homestar Runner is going to be doing, because that's 100% in Flash.
Yep.
But Homestuck's a multimedia webcomic. It's told in just about every way you can on a web page. It's got, static images, animated, Flash movies, games, music, editing pages years after they were put up, hyperlinks, custom URLs, offsite hosting, the actual design of the fucking website itself, internet chat logs, face-to-face dialogue, first, second, third, and some say fourth or fifth or sixth person. Homestuck uses a lot of different formats to tell a story.
Okay, so this might be a question I shouldn't ask, but I'm gonna throw it in there anyway. What the fuck is fourth, fifth, and sixth person storytelling?
Well, third person is where it's like, John did this.
Yeah.
Second person is I did this to John. First person is, I blah, 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 blah. It was mostly just me making a stupid joke. I think there is technically a definition for fourth person, but it's kind of like third person omniscient.
Okay, see, I didn't
watching
know
it
if
from
it was
like
an
an
actual
upward
thing.
Yeah, no, it was just me being stupid.
Okay, just making sure, because this is Homestuck, man. You never know what's real and what's not.
So, my name is Tad Homestuck aficionado. I just read the new update, and by the time I finished discussing today's update, oh shit, there's a new one. Homestuck is a web serial. It would update just about every day. Anywhere between 1 to 22 pages could drop at like any moment. It became routine for a lot of readers to just like have the tab always open and F5 it like every hour, or to even like download a third-party update notifier.
I was just about to mention that, because I remember you got me to get that to fucking help you check whenever there's a fucking update and let you know if one hits while you're busy doing something.
Yes, Alex, it's called an addiction. Addiction is a powerful thing.
Now, I said this before, but some new reviewers might not have heard me say this before, but Tad, do you ever think you like Homestuck a little too much?
Alex, please. I'm recording a podcast in 2018 about Homestuck, a comic that at this point is now 9 years old. I think I'm perfectly fine.
Okay, just making sure you know.
So checking these websites, checking these notifiers, it becomes a routine. And a routine is very powerful. It ingrains something into you. Exercising, study, physical therapy, things like those, they all benefit from a consistent routine because your body begins to expect it and like helps you along the way, or I think that's how it works. I'm not a fucking doctor.
But what I also want to point out is, you just mentioned this, sometimes he wouldn't, though. So
that's when you start jonesing.
So you would start getting this kind of loot crate ass, fucking gambling ass, like, I just mentioned in the fucking previous episode, it was like result variance or something, well, you get this variety of it. So you're sitting there looking at your fucking third-party notifier, waiting. Is he gonna update today? Is he gonna update now? He might
I
drop
need my
one page.
fucking fix.
He might drop just a single page after waiting 2 days, or he might wait 1 whole week and then just 11 fucking pages. You don't
11,
know.
Alex, please. The average, so last time I checked, from the start of Homestuck to the very end, including the several year and month-long breaks at the end of it, average was still 7 pages a day.
But you get the idea. Like, it would hit you at a variety of fucking update schedules and numbers, but it would always update enough that you would have to keep your tab open, right?
Yeah.
So that's how he got you.
I think the page where Caliborn was revealed had the most at, like, I may be way off on this, but I think it was like 70 pages. So, Alex, when we did Important Business, think of how much fucking work it was to get out one strip a week.
Well, that was because we were, like, in high school and, like, had school and shit, though. Like, this was Hussie's job.
So even if it's his job, how does he manage that? How the fuck do you do 7 pages on average a day?
You be a very, very hard worker?
Well, yes, and you have to be incredibly efficient. The look of the comic is crisp and clear and has no anti-aliasing. Which means if you draw a straight line, if you draw a 90-degree angle, it's that 90-degree angle. There's no fuzz. That's what aliasing is. It adds that kind of fuzz to things. That kind of smooths them over. Now in Homestuck, the colors are black and white for the most part, or there's like broad, flat colors. The use of the sprite look like a video game for many of the characters or items in the frame allows the author to just kind of copy and paste them in without having to actually redraw anything. For more complicated stuff like planets, musical instruments, or a typewriter, he would just fucking Google it, take it from Google Images, slap a bunch of filters, and plop it in the comic. He would find ways to cut corners and minimize quality loss by incorporating it as an art style choice and making it fit naturally. Like taking a globe from Google Images and plopping it into a room that's drawn by hand sounds like it would look like shit, but he made it look good. Like it fit the art style and it wasn't jarring.
Or it's like one of my favorite pages, actually, was when the Empress or whatever the fuck took over Earth in the fucking alternate timeline or whatever the fuck. And she has ICP and Guy Fieri as her, like, lieutenants. And they're just, like, a picture of ICP and fucking Guy Fieri just, like, with a one purple, like, filter just put over them. They look so shitty, but it's kind of part of the joke, so you accept it and you laugh at it.
Yeah, Homestuck understands that what it's doing is really fucking stupid, but it doesn't let it stop that from taking it seriously. It's a really good mix of stupid horse shit and wackiness. Now, another part of how he was able to make it so efficient is that he would reuse a lot of assets or reflavor them many times over as part of the constant self-referencing Homestuck goes through. Repetition, reiteration, and repeating. The 3 R's. Repetition, reiteration, and repeating. Homestuck's just fucking sopping wet with callbacks and references to things outside of the comic and many, many things in place, like things that happen over the course of the story. Most blatant are, of course, when he will just straight up reuse an animation or a sprite with like a new character. There's way too many of these for me to point out, so I'm just going to point out some of my favorite ones. When Terezi ascends the staircase to go kill Vriska, it follows when Dave went to the rooftop to fight his brother. It follows the same pacing and reuses a lot of the same sprites, and the music's like a remix of Dave's theme, Upward Movement. Some of the other ones are like just words or dumb things like huge bitch, blah blah, and like the sleeping pose that's used every time someone's like, anytime anyone goes to bed. He would reuse abandoned old gimmicks from like the first act, like Prankster's Gambit, Flighty Broadmeter. Dirk and Bro's room was littered with a bunch of shit from his blog, like that horse painting that I mentioned earlier.
Oh.
When you first play as Jade, you get to like fight, quote unquote, with her grandpa, just like everyone else fought with their guardians. but for hers, you just kind of like mash your keyboard and play the flute. And he used those same like flute samples in those Star Trek videos. One of the bigger ones is that the Midnight Crew as a whole came from a fan donation story. He used to take, like, you'd give him $25 and he would draw like a short story for you. And they actually came from that. But these repetitions are more significant than just being like a funny goof. The story of Homestuck is cyclical and I guess spoilers. So the whole cycle of the game that they play, Spurb, is that you create a frog that contains an entire universe. Then you do that inside of the previous frog that you're in, because that's your universe, and it just kind of goes in this repeating cycle. You'll see, you know, alpha, like the alpha kids and trolls have aspects of the beta ones, and shit like that. When he sets up the story like this, he's able to reuse a lot of his stuff. So the real meat and potatoes of Homestuck comes from the format's improvisational storytelling. Homestuck started with like a skeleton of a storyline from start to finish, and then blossomed from there. I've got a quote from one of the books here. I dropped some initial objects and conditions into the room and began to let things take shape organically through whimsical selection of reader commands. Even though the most immediate result of this was a lot of silly antics, there were a few major and long-lasting consequences that followed from it.
So wait, if I may. So he was still taking reader suggestions of action commands at the start of Homestuck?
For the first 2 acts, yes. After that, there was too many coming in, and what the problem he had was that he could skim over them and find exactly what he wanted to do anyway. And he's like, well, if I'm going to do that, then I might as well just not take it, because I'm going to go with that every time. Because this is what I'm believing the story should go as. And I can't choose one that's kind of like it that I want to do that'll end up changing things. So he's like, all right, we'll just scrap it.
Yeah, okay.
So what he then decided is like, I'm going to incorporate it in different ways throughout it. So what I believe the plot skeleton of Homestuck is that Homestuck, as you can tell right now, Homestuck is a story about 4 kids growing up on the internet. They live on other sides of the country from each other, but are still very close friends. And each one of them has issues. Despite being all over the world, they all have issues with their respective parental guardian. Over the course of the Spurb creation myth, the kids go through their own kind of coming-of-age story, just like the Genesis frog itself. And the kids eventually meet face-to-face with a younger version of their guardians. Those guardians, of course, having the same situation where when they were younger, they had issues with their parents. They work together through their issues and succeed at winning the mission. Everyone learns to settle their differences, grow into adults as the Genesis frog matures into adulthood. That's what I believe the plot skeleton of Homestuck was. And I've got a little bit to support this. What it is that the aspects that you could pull from that initial storyline are basically the only ones that have very long-reaching and planned-out plot points. The Alpha timeline with Jane, Roxy, Dirk, and Jake was most likely settled around Act 3, because that's when Jade begins to speak with Jake through the letter that she receives and sends out with the box. And in Grandpa's like elevator room with the teleporting thing, there's a blue room, the blue ladies, the pink mummies, and the orange knights, which match the color of those other Alpha kids. And also, in the Skynet labs, there's a monitor showing an 8-player session that I guess a lot of people, just like me, just totally fucking missed. But I had this huge paragraph all about the Guardians and their relationship, but really all you need to take from it is that each one of the kids' guardians are seen as these powerful, invisible, faceless, like, forces. They're not seen as people. They don't have a face. They don't think of them as people because that's how a child thinks of their parent until they hit like their teenagers and realizes, oh, yeah, they're just normal people like me. You know, you have Dad. John can barely lift a hammer, but Dad can throw a fucking safe. Mm-hmm. Like, Mom is able to kill a giant ogre by herself without being in danger at all, but Rose can barely, like, make a jump. See what I mean here?
Yeah, I'm following you. I'm following you.
And this is something that a lot of people don't seem to think about with the trolls. Now, the trolls on Alternia, they don't have parents. They don't they do kind of with the ancestors, but they're not there. They see them as distant historical figures. The first time we get a look at the ancestors, like, they're getting killed, like, right away. Like, it's no big deal. Like, they get their arms ripped off. Karkat's ancestor gets fucking stabbed. Like, it's no big deal. And the white creatures that they have all have facial features, because the trolls don't look at them as these forces, these protectors and things like that. They're just, oh, that's my crab dad. He dies by having a fucking safe drop on him. The trolls don't have this same kind of connection.
They don't necessarily give a shit.
It's not, I mean, they can still love them, but they don't see them as these ultimate protectors like the kids do. Now let's talk about retroactive foreshadowing. To quote Andrew Hussie's own words, foreshadowing is often interchangeable with inspires. So the way that he told Homestuck is that he would litter the story with open-ended questions. He would introduce a concept, leave it in the middle of the scene, and then just continue on his merry way. He would then repurpose the object later on to fill gaps left in things introduced later. He would retroactively make an item important to the plot when he didn't originally know what he was going to use the item for. Example, Locale. In the book commentary, he stated that the little puppet he knew what was going to be important, and he wanted to make him stand out from everything else. Because remember, in Homestuck, it's mostly black and white, except for some things that'll have color.
Like Little Cal.
Yeah. Dave was colored, and then, of course, the outside sky was also colored because it was that red. And he wasn't sure what he wanted to do with him, but he knew that he was going to use it for something. So Locale was carried around by various characters until he thought, aha, this is what I'll use him for. Another example, the rabbit, the bunny that John gets, the joke of putting the bunny back in the box. He knew it was going to be important, but not how. So he would have it go to every single character just because of the dumb joke of trying to put the bunny back in the box. Then eventually the bunny popped out, cut and ended up being, it was the Crucible that made the kids' session get fucked because the present, Jade sent it to him, and I'm trying to remember. That's right. Jade had the bunny in the package, and it was like super upgraded. This was the rabbit at the end, after it had all these high level items. And Jack got a hold of it, opened it up, and then it killed the queen. He took the ring, which he's not supposed to have, and they fucked everything up. And that he reused the bunny as this thing when he originally it was just a one-off joke. A few more example quotes pulled from the book commentary. Cantown wasn't a thing I ever planned on doing, but it did have an impact in subtle ways, such as the remaining exiles being members of community service, mailman, police officer, mayor. And this is referring to when they had the first intermission where it was shown Wayward Vagabond just fucking around in like a an office, or not an office, a mysterious like dungeon thing. Then this one here, this page is what retroactively led to Vriska's interest in 8-balls, her weird obsession with smashing them, and ultimately her entanglement with themes of luck, both good and bad. It's pretty hard to find a totally useless page with no later relevance. And one final quote about this one. Many things don't quite exist until the reader becomes aware of them. Once they come into being, then it's as if they were already there. A good example of this is, so the trolls came from Alternia, which is a violent Lord of the Flies-like area. And then way, way, way later on, in about 2012, during Act 6, actually, Alternia is a different one. So Beforus was the original troll planet. He used the Scratch concept where where the kids reset their game. He took that concept and applied it to the trolls, and Beforus already exists as the world the ancestors lived on. there's no issue caused by it existing retroactively. So, we've been looking at the second troll session this whole time. Weird, huh?
So basically what he did was he just put a bunch of random shit later and said, okay, maybe this could be important later. I don't fucking know.
He left all these things just like, whatever. I'll just leave this here.
He didn't
I'll use it
necessarily
later.
He didn't necessarily have plans for it, but it was a just in case kind of thing.
And that did come to bite him in the ass when at the very end of the comic, oh, okay, well, there's the ending, guys. Wait, what about all these things that you left here that didn't have any kind of resolution? That's the end of the comic, guys. Thanks to the money. So let's talk about Lord English. So Lord English is the biggest of the big bads in Homestuck. He's like the JRPG final boss that shows up at the end after the main villain is beaten. He's not really in view for most of Homestuck. He shows up in like very briefly at the end of Act 5 when he comes out of Doc Scratch.
Don't forget how they hype him up though when they prelude to him during like the fucking the felt and shit.
Yep, his original naming is during the intermission with the Midnight Crew and the Felt Gang, which is just, it was a more traditional, because a lot of people didn't like Homestuck because it wasn't like Problem Sleuth. And so Hussie was like, all right. Let's take a step back and let's do another kind of mobster style story. Let's do that just kind of in the middle here. Fuck it, I can do this. In the end of Homestuck, what Lord English was made out of was 4 characters. Caliborn, the cherub child who's all green and the main personality. Dirk, the kid version of Bro. His glasses and Equius, the super strong troll. And then half of Gamzee. Caliborn was the main appearance, and Equius was like, he was just, oh, look, I'm strong. And then the glasses were like a cunning, it was like, I think it was called HAL 1000 or something. It was basically like a super cunning robot.
That's the reference to that fucking Space Odyssey movie.
Yeah. And then the half of Gamzee was so that English would have strong Caliborn, and then Doc Scratch would have cunning and intelligent, split the stuff. And there's basically zero foreshadowing that this was going to happen. Like, there's no hints early on that, besides Caliborn, that this is going to be part of Lord English. Because he was introduced before Act fucking 4 as a mob boss of the Felt, which didn't even fit who he became in the end. At the end of Homestuck, the only traits that we know for sure about him is that 1, he really fucking hates his sister. 2, he's freakishly muscled. And 3, he's a Lord of Time. It seems to me that this was like a case of, well, shit, I need to create Lord English, and I've got some characters that share his traits. So, all right, here we go. I'll just use these 4, and we'll make him that. That's going to be the big reveal. Now, I do want to point something out. Doc Scratch did actually have a tease when Rose called him a creepy uncle. In the flash where it was revealed like what these guys are made out of, it like showed that conversation again. Because technically, Dirk, it gets kind of complicated when you get into like who's related to who in Homestuck.
I'm following, but
okay.
please.
So I'll explain this one, just this one. So Doc Scratch could technically be considered Rose's uncle, because what Doc Scratch is he's a first guardian. What that is that's someone that Spurb designates, or creates rather, that is intended to protect the planet and get it ready for the game, so that you have as many people as possible who are ready Freddy to win the game and keep propagating and making more shit. And he was made out of Lil Cal, and then like an omnipotent like globe, I think. It's been a while. But those AR glasses are basically Dirk's story was that he was like in the middle of fucking nowhere. And all he had was himself, and he made a little robot that was a clone of himself at 11 years old. It was like a computer program. So it's kind of like Dirk's brother. And because Bro and Mom, Bro and Mom are technically kind of sort of Rose and Dave's parents. So the AR glasses are kind of sort of, I guess, like her uncle. And since they got put into like the doll, It's complicated, Alex.
Now, hang on. Now, I think that maybe Hussie just got lucky and didn't actually plan this one all that much.
Oh, 100%. Like I said, he was like, boom, got it. I'm gonna use this thing.
He's the guy who fucking barely wins and says, "Ha, easy."
Basically. So, he did have that kind of tease, but you could easily play that off as him goofing on a previous conversation that was in the story. So even that, he was just lucky. Luckiest man in webcomics. So, more about Lord English is that there really wasn't a constant presence of those different bodies in English. He was just a mindless unga. But I think that kind of plays into the overall theme of Homestuck. Homestuck is a coming-of-age story, and therefore about growing up. Lord English is Caliborn giving power without having to grow up. He's literally an autistic man-child who loves anime, given ultimate power to kill his sister. Now, I think the intention was to have the assembled protags grow up over the comic, metaphorically and literally, because there was a 3-year journey, and go up against someone who basically entered, like, the GTA cheat code for max stats. But, like, Caliborn worked... We followed Caliborn throughout the story, and he worked very hard to get to where he was. He did, what was the name of the guy in Persona 4 that didn't do any social links?
Oh, technically speaking, that'd be like Adachi.
Yeah, he basically did that, where he's like, fuck people, I just want power and prestige. I only care about me, I don't care about others. And if that was a big detriment for him, or played into his downfall, it would work. But it's explicitly stated his race normally doesn't even have friends. So, like, it kind of falls flat if the intention was to show you need to grow and work over time to mature and, like, have friends to be a full person. Now, I want to talk about really, really quickly about how another story handled the overpowered idiot man-child final boss, Worm. Now, it's kind of hard to explain it without super spoiling it, so I'll try not to, but, like, you could skip ahead 3 minutes. Now, in Worm, the big final boss is this alien that has ended up assuming a human form. Humans have emotions that this alien doesn't, like, normally have, so it didn't know what the fuck they were or how to control them. And it hasn't needed to. Like, it hasn't needed to ever exercise any kind of emotional restraint, because he was never in any position to be worried about hurting himself or having to deal with losing, because he's stupidly overpowered. You could basically 1-to-1 port that to Lord English. He's pretty much the same. Once you have ultimate power, you don't really have any reason to learn to cope with failure or, like, holding back your anger. In Worm, they use this to bait this alien thing into basically killing itself by, like, bullying the shit out of it until it didn't know how to handle, like, it didn't know how to fucking process it. And you could basically 1-to-1 put that into Homestuck, and it would have been much better than the incredibly confusing and not satisfying half ending that we got. Lord English was physically invulnerable. You couldn't fucking punch him. And just like the Worm guy, his only real thing that he was susceptible to would have been beating the shit out of him emotionally, because Caliborn was not emotionally mature in the fucking slightest. That was one of the only things that was, like, consistent about him. He never learned to cope with being bad at something. Whew. So that's a lot of info. It's like, it's like an hour of stuff just dumped on you guys. So I'm at the last bit here, and it won't take that much more time. So Homestuck was Andrew Hussie's entire waking life for, like, a super long time. Mm-hmm. He had to be super invested to crank out 7 pages a day. And for the first 3 years, yeah, it was going pretty well. I don't know if he was popping fucking Adderall or what, but it was going pretty sweet until about 2012 when he had the Kickstarter. So the Kickstarter ended up causing massive fucking headaches.
Was it really all the way back in 2012?
2012, 6 years ago.
Where did the time go?
The original plan was to raise the money via Kickstarter, give it to the Odd Gentleman to make the game while he advised, And go listen to the Hive Swap and Hive Swap update video for more info on that if you're interested on what exactly step-by-step happened with Hive Swap. But Hussie ended up taking on the burden of managing a gaggle of fuck-up 20-year-olds called What Pumpkin. Also around this time, his fucking dad dies. And if that's not enough, he's having to stop what he's doing and try to manage his immense fan base who overreact to every fucking thing he does. He made a joke about there was a secret code you can enter early on in one of the flashes. They activated trickster mode, where someone made like a funny sprite edit of John on the forums, and Hussie thought, oh, that's pretty funny. I'm going to put this in the flash. And it was just that. It was just a little goof. And so it ended up becoming a thing. He ended up repurposing it into like a mechanic of the story. And as part of it, they all had Caucasian skin. And so he made a joke about them, because it was a big deal for a while, ever since the Kickstarter, where people would, there was like a sticker sheet, but everyone was white, and that's not okay. And so it became a whole fucking huge virtue signaling pile of horse shit, where if Jade is not Arabic, if John is not Chinese, if Rose is not black enough, you're a fucking racist, Alex.
If this isn't a fucking Burger King's Kids Club thing, you ain't fucking making good content.
Exactly. And so he had one of the characters like hold the other one right up to her face and say, I feel so Caucasian, as like a goof on these people. And it's suddenly a huge fucking deal. Like a bunch of people started harassing others, and he had to stop everything to say, hey, okay, I'm going to change the joke. I guess. Stop. So you have all this shit. Like, and the same fucking thing happens again, where later on in the comic, like, I think it was maybe not even a year later, there was a Caliborn intermission where he took over the storytelling of the webcomic, and he drew his own OC. So he went on DeviantArt and pulled some guy's really shitty anime Lord English, because this was before he was revealed, and used that in the comic, like put a fedora on it and shit. It's just like a goof. Like, oh, I took this guy's terrible thing and put it up there. Suddenly it's a huge fucking deal, and he's bullying people, and he has to stop everything. And at a certain point, you just give up trying to involve yourself with anything your fans do, because you don't want to fucking deal with it. It's too much. Anytime you try to do something, it would be like if I posted on Twitter and then I had to stop everything because someone took like a totally benign thing I said and twisted it into me hating Jewish people.
I mean, personally, he shouldn't have just given the attention and kept going with his own jokes anyway. He should have said, these nuts, and moved on. Because by giving into what they want, they win.
A lot of people stopped reading Homestuck around this time because, well, why the fuck is he apologizing for this joke when he would have just told people, hey, quit being a bunch of bitches, back in like early 2000s when he first started. But now he's like, oh, well, hold on, let me go back and manage my fan base. And it was a lot of horse shit. So I think at this point he's getting really cynical about the whole fucking comic. I got a few points that kind of back that up. No more fan mingling. He stops using his Twitter. He closes his forum spring. Doesn't show up to any more fucking conventions. It's not worth the hassle. And this one here, I think, is the biggest piece. There was a time where he came back from a few months of break because he had to constantly break for months or a year at a time because he was flying back and forth across the country trying to figure out what the fuck was happening with the Odd Gentleman. You know, going to his dad, dealing with his dad's stuff, all of this shit. He comes back, he's like, hey, I'm going to come back with these fast and loose updates. We're going to really, really quickly, you know, make it, and then we're going to be done. Now, he makes content fast, but he doesn't rush anything out just to fill a quota. So this was a section of the comic that was noticeably lower in quality than the rest, with the intent to get it over with. And it's such a, like, even when it, like right when it came out, it felt really odd to me because it was such a departure from the meandering, kind of slow going, take it cheesy pace that Homestuck always had. He came back like, all right, here, circle, line, done. Fucking there. Update's done. Here's a fucking another one. Like, he was he didn't want to take his time with it anymore. And then, of course, the actual ending of the comic itself, with Act 7 and the end credits and the mysterious epilogue that may or may not even happen. The closing bits of Homestuck were basically unchanged from what the ending would have been in like 2013. Despite having a sextuple stuffed Act 6 and all these plot lines that were left unaddressed. And as I got to thinking about these, there was another moment kind of near the end, like during this Fast and Loose, that stuck out to me. And this was something that he was piecing together for Lord English to become part of. He took the glasses that Dirk had and threw them into like a sprite along with Equius's dead body. So he made Arqueus, like super strong, and then the cunning glasses that he could just take and put it into the fucking thing later on. And when he did this weird thing that he's never done before and he's never done after, where he put like this big paragraph and then told people, hey, you should take selfies with this page and post it on, send it to me on Twitter and post it on the forums and all that.
What? Why?
Now, here's what I think. Now, no one's ever confirmed this. This is pretty much just going pure game theory with this. Smartest show about Homestuck. Now, the selfie moment for this was, I think, Andrew Hussie getting proof, quote unquote, that his fan base was like, teen to early 20-year-olds perfectly suited to be advertised to and a great revenue source. I think this was because the Viz Media acquisition happened about a year after the end of the comic. That's not something that just happens like instantly. I think this was him getting proof that, I have all these people of this age range that are they're attached to my comic. Check this out. I can sell this. This is a worthwhile investment. I'm fairly certain that he was doing that out of a cynical, just purely business move. And I mean, it worked, because after Homestuck ended, like, Viz Media bought it. Viz Media bought Homestuck and is now... And another piece to kind of indicate that he was done with Homestuck is once it ended, he didn't do fucking shit related to Homestuck. He wasn't associated with Hiveswap at fucking all, as you can tell from the Hiveswap episodes. And he didn't put out like book commentaries until a while afterwards, and only after like Viz Media acquired it. I'm assuming probably as part of like the contract that he had to sign. Like, you need to finish these things and give these interviews, because he gave interviews about Homestuck that he never gave during that whole fucking time period. He gave like one interview once in like 2010 or something, then never again. And then there's also that one weird convention one. If you ever Google Andrew Hussie, the pictures that they have for him, each one of them looks like a different person. You can slowly see the soul leaving his eyes. But I'm 100% sure that he was done. He was tired of it. He was not having fun with Homestuck anymore. Does he regret it? I don't think so. I don't think he regrets it, because it was
free fucking money.
Yes, money, definitely number one reason. Number two, he got to do a lot of creative stuff with it. He got to try out like a million billion different things. He got to try out flashes. He got to try out this. He formed a fucking art and music team. Now, it may sound like through this whole, hour and 10 minutes or whatever, that I'm just shitting on Homestuck and that I never liked it. But that's not true. I don't believe Homestuck is worth reading in its entirety. I think it's way too overbloated with stuff that goes nowhere. And the gems that show up. Act 6 was originally supposed to be short, but ended up being half the fucking length of the comic. That has like very, very low lows and very, very high highs. Trying to recommend someone to read all of Homestuck, I probably wouldn't do. But the things that Homestuck did, I think were very interesting. The small mysteries that were always throughout it that actually did get addressed were very cool. What's the denizen? What's a Frey motif? Classes, aspects, what's going on with these exiles? How did Jade, who's she talking to? There was all these small mysteries that were constantly present, and the breadcrumb trail to them, like, oh fuck, Doc Scratch, that's crazy, whoa, holy shit. And then of course discussing it with people at the time and all that, and being a teenager myself. But I'll go more into my actual experience reading through it in the next episode. But for this one here, I wanted to go over who Andrew Hussie was and how he went about writing Homestuck. And I think that'll do it. I think that's just about everything I got to say.
What a very interesting episode indeed.
See, Alex, and you were thrashing around. I don't want to do it. I hate Homestuck. That's you. That's what you sound like.
Hey, honey, I can still just not save this recording. Don't make me do it. I'm crazy enough to do it.
You wouldn't dare.
What I wanted to say that was actually for the episode was, it's very interesting to see about the author himself, because it does actually kind of reflect onto how he does things. Most particularly, how fed up he was getting with the fans near the end. Because that kind of shit really does mentally drain you more than you might think it does. Because the fans are kind of what keep you going. And if the fans are annoying, it's like, well, who am I doing this for then? Because clearly not for myself, because this is work to me now. And they're just going to fucking shit on it, so what do I do?
Mm-hmm. If I missed anything obvious in here, feel free to point it out to me either on Twitter at LetMeTellYouPD or at the email LetMeTellYouAbout@gmail.com. Let me tell you about with 3 T's. Or fucking leave a comment on the YouTube there. Podcast is on YouTube. It's on iTunes and Google Play. I use my own phone's podcast app to kind of keep track of it if you don't want to use iTunes directly or Google Play directly. I think I got everything that I needed here. If I missed anything, berate me on the Discord. Or if you think we did a good job, check out the Patreon. That's in the description there. And I'm definitely going to do one more of these. Probably to finish out Homestuck month after the 25th, when I've got everything there. It might come out early November if I don't have the time for it. And then I might do a Patreon bonus about Act 7. It really kind of depends if people are that interested in it. But thanks for listening to this whole Homestuck hullabaloo. And that's one of the many ways that Homestuck has ruined my life.